Let's connect with Parikshit D Kandpal, infrastructure analyst at HDFC Securities, to talk a little bit more about that. And, a massive fundraise from DLF coming through this time around. Of course, they will be using this sum for debt servicing besides their general corporate purposes. And, the management had earlier said that they plan to be debt-free by the end of this fiscal year via the capital infusion from promoters and the share sale. How are you looking at the overall debt component for DLF coming down currently at about 7,200 odd crores?
Yeah. So we expect around 3,000 crores, close to 3,000 crores of fundraise from the QIP, and balance monies of around 2,250 crores from the promoters. So 5,300 odd crores is expected to come in, and it should reduce their debt from the current levels of 7,200 to almost 200 crores to almost 2,000 crores in the DEFCO. So suppose that they have unsold inventory of roughly around 12,300, which is almost complete. So they are monetizing that, and the entire construction costs have been incurred. So that will also add to the cash flows. I think by this year end, FY20, they should be debt-free at the DEFCO level. This is a residential company. The rental company, they will continue to have debt of around 16,000 crores. But since this is now an associate, so this debt will not get consolidated into the DLF accounts.
Parikshit, where from the levels of 195 does DLF go? Because this seems like this has sort of re-rated the entire stock, and clearly this has been the preferred one within real estate. And as there are sort of yellow weeds, appearing within the real estate sector, it seems like the tide is now favoring DLF as the top pick here.
Yeah, so in the last couple of years have been like, if you see the big reforms which have played out, the Real and GST, so that is favoring the organized developers. So DLF is now shifting to a model where they will launch the projects when they are nearing substantial completion. So now they have balance sheet strength post this QIP with the almost near debt-free state. So which will give them enough legroom in terms of completing the projects and then launching it. And there's a demand for ready inventory. So I think that augur well for DLF post this QIP and the fund infusion by promoters. So, and even this 12,000 crores of nearing completion inventory, which will give them sufficient cash flows, like, I mean, they will generate substantial cash flows from this as well over the next 3-4 years as they monetize this inventory. I would think that in 3 to 4 years, they'll be able to monetize this entire inventory. So that itself will add huge cash flows to the company. And there has been a rental uptick. The commercial assets have been doing. We recently saw one of the successful REITs going through. So DLF being almost in the top 2 in terms of rental asset portfolio, so that itself should substantially re-rate the valuation. So we remain positive. We have a buy rating on the stock. We have target price of 264.
Parikshit, do you have a view overall on, the real estate space? It had been quite an underperformer last year, but we have seen some, sort of traction building up in the space as a whole. How are you looking at, the overall sector?
See, overall sector, there has been the market as such is not growing. The investors are totally out of this market. But what is happening is there is a tangible shift which is happening from the unorganized players to the organized player. We are seeing incremental evidences of large corporate group now getting into real estate. We have seen Century now getting more aggressive. We have seen some other players evaluating getting into real estate. So as the sector becomes more organized, so obviously it will be end-user driven demand, which will these developers will cater to. So I would say we don't expect any major built-up in volume growth, but obviously the market shift will happen. Market share shift will keep happening from the unorganized to organized players. So our coverage universe of like Oberoi, DLF, Shobha Prestige, Brigade, Pulte Patil. So these players are the market share leaders within their respective segments. So I think they should continue to do well.
Parikshit, thanks so much for joining us with a quick check there on some of those realty names, and particularly DLF, which is buzzing today on the back of the QIP. All right, let's take a look at some of the other